Hey students, this is Mr. Boyd again. And in today's lesson, we're going to take a look at how do you solve a two-step equation. Before we jump into that though, I want you to make sure that you write down your assignment in your planner that you're going to be doing the ALEKS 1.10, and we will likely have time in class to get started with that. So very similar to yesterday's lesson on one-step equations, we're going to use inverse operations or opposite operations to undo the problem. And you got to do the same thing to both sides of the equal sign. So just down here real quick, a review of inverse operations. The inverse of addition would be subtraction, and the inverse of subtraction would be addition. The inverse of multiplication would be division, and the inverse of division would be multiplication. That's why there's double arrows here. So when we use inverse operations, we're going to first use addition or subtraction to isolate the variable term. And then second, we'll use multiplication or division to isolate the variable. And then last, we'll check our solution. Okay, so we see our first example is 3b minus 5 equals 10. Okay, we want to highlight or note that 3b, the entire 3b is called the variable term. b is the variable, and the negative 5 is the constant. Okay, so when I use those terms, I'd like for you to make sure you understand them. Okay, so in this example, 3b minus 5 equals 10. The first thing we want to use is use the inverse operation to isolate the 3b. So I'm going to just go ahead and highlight that. I want to isolate 3b. So what I see is that I'm subtracting 5 from the 3b. So if I use inverse operations, I'm going to add 5 to both sides of the equal sign. Now to help us visualize both sides of the equal sign, let's go ahead and draw our line like we did yesterday. Now when I do that, negative 5 plus 5 is 0. So I can just cross that out. And notice all I have left on the left side of the line, or on the problem side of the line, is 3b. So I'll just copy that down. I'll put my equal sign right on the line. I'm going to go ahead and simplify this right-hand side by adding 10 plus 5, and that's going to give me 15. And then now I want to isolate the variable. In other words, get b all by itself. So to do that, I notice that this is 3b, or 3 times b. So the inverse of multiplication would be to divide. So I'm going to divide by whatever b is being multiplied by. In this case, it's 3. Since I divide by 3 on the left side, I've got to do the same thing on the right-hand side. 3 divided by 3 is 1b. 15 divided by 3 is 5. 1 times b is just b. So let's see if that actually works. 3 times 5 minus 5, does that in fact equal 10? So this would turn out to be 15 minus 5 equals 10. That checks out, so our solution is b equals 5. Okay, let's take a look at our next example. I'm going to move it right up here. I think I'll move this one off to the side till we're ready for it. Okay, so this next example, I see that my variable term is x divided by 4. I'm going to highlight that. So to isolate my variable term here, I need to subtract 7. Again, I'm going to draw my line at the equal sign, so I make sure I do the same thing to both sides. So 7 minus 7 is 0. I'll just cross that out. I don't need to write the 0. Bring down what's left over here on this side, x divided by 4 equals, now I need to do 3 minus 7, Well, 3 minus 7 would be negative 4 because we're taking away more than we started with. The difference of 3 and 7 is 4, but because 7 is bigger and it's minus or negative, we're going to make the answer negative. Okay. Next, we need to undo division to isolate the variable. So to do that, I'm going to multiply because that's the inverse of dividing by 4. So if I divide by 4 or multiply by 4 on the left-hand side, I'll do the same thing on the right-hand side. When I do that, I find out that 4 divided by 4 is just 1, so that leaves me with 1x again. And 4 times negative 4 is negative 16. 1 times x is x. So does this in fact work? Well, let's check it over here. Negative 16 divided by 4 plus 7 equals positive 3. Well, negative 16 divided by 4 would be negative 4 plus 7. Does that in fact equal 3? Well, we find out that it actually does. So it checks out. So our solution is x equals negative 16. I've got one more example for you guys, and then I'm going to turn you loose on your assignment. So here we go with 2.3g. All right, so again, let's draw our line at the equal sign. Let's see, we're adding 5.2, so the inverse would be to subtract 5.2. That's going to give me 0. I'm going to get 2.3g equals, gosh, I don't know what that is. I'm going to do it on a calculator since I'm allowed to use a calculator. So 15 minus 5.2 is 9.8. And then last, I will isolate the variable by dividing by 2.3 because that's the inverse of multiplication. And when I do that, I get g equals, again, I'm going to use my calculator, divide by 2.3. Oh, this is a big number, so I'm going to round this off to the 10th place. So I got 4.26 and a bunch of other stuff. I'm going to round that off to 4.3, and this is the 10th place. Okay, so here we find out that our solution is approximately 4.3. If we put it back here in the equation and check it, we would not end up with exactly 15, but we should end up with something close. So let's do that. 2.3 times 4.3 plus 5.2. Does that in fact equal 15? So let's see, 2.3 times 4.3 plus 5.2, and we got 15.09, so that was really close. So we're going to call that good, and our solution is 4.3 because we were asked to round to the 10th place. All right, guys, hope this was helpful. Go ahead and start on your assignment. Have a good day.